Good morning. This is Conrad Chua on the business case study, and uh, it's Saturday, 5:15 a.m. here in Cambridge. The sun just rose about 10 minutes ago, and you can see what it's like outside in my garden. Yep, that whole rewilding is going on really well. All kinds of weeds and wildflowers, but you can see the rose up there as well. So today we're going to talk about how a company that's richest and the most valuable in the world built its business largely on how it marketed its products to be so desirable, has struggled in marketing recently, specifically in streaming content. We're talking about Apple, the guys that redefined phones, right, like this, right, made it so desirable. They're worth the market cap way in excess of $1 trillion, right? They've struggled badly in one of the most important industries of our time. And no, I'm not talking about AI, although they are struggling, right? A lot. They've had a lot of missteps, chaos. No, I'm talking about streaming. So today, we're going to dive into why Apple TV Plus, despite its premium shows, Hollywood star power, has not become that household streaming habit or entered the mainstream the way HBO has. And I'm guessing it's still called HBO. It's now called HBO since it's gone through countless name changes, right? So I think more importantly, you might be thinking, well, what does this have to do with me? Because chances are, you're not working in a company that's in streaming, right? But I think every brand, marketer, and platform strategist can learn from Apple's misfires. Now, Apple launched Apple TV Plus in 2019. They brought on some of the biggest names in show business, right? Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon, uh, Jason Momoa, and they went through all this stuff about how it's about the stories and tapping in to Apple's legacy or relationship with content developers, making these wonderful, using Apple hardware to make these wonderful movies or music, right? And obviously they wanted to move in to the movie creation business using some of that star power and brand association. Yet, by 2025, Apple TV Plus, global subscription base, it's still just a fraction of Netflix or Amazon Prime. And the question really is, why? Why is that? I think a lot of things, it's about today and how today's streaming war is not just about the content. And many people will say that Apple TV Plus, the content is stellar, right? They regularly get more than 75% on Rotten Tomatoes. Fans love it. So it's not the content that's the problem, right? Or the quality of the content. But content is only half the equation. You need to market this. And you need smart, cultural, omnipresent marketing that taps into all the channels that we use right now to entertain ourselves, to get information, and to get excited about. So that is a critical how. Now, by what we think is about estimated first quarter 2025, Apple TV Plus only had 8% of US market share. That's the largest market, by the way. At 8%. Netflix, on the other hand, 20. Prime Video, about 2021. Now, unlike Netflix or Prime, Apple didn't make Apple TV Plus a destination. The catalog is small. We're talking about maybe 300 originals compared to Netflix where it's like 16, 17,000 titles. That was also hardly to do with Apple's strategy. From the very beginning, they decided that Apple TV Plus would be a premium service in terms of the quality of content, and to make that distinction, they wanted it all to be original content. So if you go to Netflix or to Prime, Amazon Prime, Yes, you'll see some of their originals, but you'll see a lot of content that they license or bought over from other places. You see that a lot more now with Amazon Prime rather than Netflix, because Netflix has accumulated enough of its original catalog such that it maybe deprioritizes any content that it didn't produce, right? And it pushes a lot more of its original content to you through the algorithms. Prime doesn't have as many originals, so they have rely a lot more on bought-in content. Of course, for Netflix, when they started, the equation was more like Prime, and they pushed a lot more of the content that they bought. But it made a lot of sense for Netflix, right, to push more of the original content because they invested so much in their original content. And anytime the subscriber watches that original content, they don't have to pay some outside studio or production company or distribution licensing company to show that kind of the non-original content. Apple was probably looking at that in 2019 and thinking 2018, before the launch, and thinking that is the strategy we want to go. We want to leapfrog both Netflix and Prime. We're just going to go all in on the original content. I think the problem there, and I was one of the first Apple TV Plus subscribers, is there was not much content to begin with. And so you see that big launch, you're really excited, you go in, and there's nothing. There's very, very little movies, films. The release schedule was really sporadic in the beginning, right? So that was a big issue in trying to get that initial subscriber in excitement and interest. And because of that, the kind of destination, top of mind streaming destination for movies and films in people's minds now is not Apple. I mean, 8%, you're not getting anywhere. People are thinking Netflix, maybe Prime, right? So those are the destinations that people have in their mind when they sit down on the weekend and think, or on the evening and think, yeah, let's watch a movie, let's watch a TV show. It's going to be the Netflix or Prime. It's not Apple TV. Number two, Apple's own ecosystem became a limiter. Apple didn't leverage its greatest advantage, its billion device ecosystem. Right? They never pushed any notifications to you that there was a new show coming up. They never cross-promoted any shows on Apple TV Plus. Right? When you open your iPhone, or if you're using the Messages app or something like that, they didn't do any of that. I think that was, again, is partly a strategy decision that they inherited. Right? They have a very strong privacy ethos, but it clashes with that kind of aggressive marketing that you see in Amazon, where if you sign up for an Amazon email newsletter, they'll tell you all the great things about Prime, but they'll tell you, okay, we're showing Champions League, for example, or there's this new TV series that we are producing or rolling out. You go to Amazon's website, you see the same thing. So in a way, Apple's privacy ethos drives this, which is a good thing, right, I guess. But it's also been the case that Apple's walled garden approach for the app developers has come back to bite them in here. Apple has lots of restrictions on what developers can do, which is great for Apple as a digital landlord, right, collecting rent on its devices. But for streaming, they have to follow the same rules. They have to be a responsible citizen. So they just can't blast your phone with ads for their shows or streaming service because they wouldn't allow other developers to do this. And here they are considered like another developer. It would be a red flag to developers, especially now when there's just so much anti-competitive scrutiny on Apple and other tech giants. Now, so the thing here is you just can't build those habits of going to becoming a destination if you don't show up where your users already are. They've got 1 billion devices. People are using these phones multiple times a day, picking it up, swiping. But when you do that, there's such a huge opportunity to just showcase something about Apple TV Plus. But Apple hasn't done that, or hasn't been able to square the circle about how they can do this. Number three, there's this huge branding confusion that's going on. Um, I've been talking about Apple TV Plus and all, but here there's three things that's going on. First of all, there's Apple TV. There's the set-top box. There's if you open that, there is an Apple TV app amongst your fitness app, your Netflix app, all that. And there is also Apple TV Plus, which is the streaming service that you pay for to see all those movies and films that Apple has done. It is a mess. You have three different things, right? A physical hardware, an app, and a service, all called Apple TV with a little plus at the end, at the very end. I struggle to even explain this to my friends, and I just don't understand why Apple, a company that prides itself on the simplicity of its products and design, can't get this right. So this brand confusion actually creates a huge barrier because people have been thinking, okay, these Apple TV shows are really interesting, but hey, do I need this Apple TV hardware to watch it? Do I need a Mac or a phone to watch it? And the answer is no. Actually, you can watch all these streaming shows from Apple on a Roku or any other set-top box if they allow apps. And here you go. You just need the Apple TV app, which you then use to access the Apple TV Plus streaming service. Did you get all that? Probably not. I wouldn't blame you for that. And it's just a branding mess. So the lesson here is the brand architecture. It has to be intuitive or people just tap out. Next lesson, there's just social media silence, right? Netflix has a huge number of shows where it's created memes, people share them, it's taking over social media every couple of weeks, right? You've got HBO or A24 dropping these trailers that just get 1 million views in about 24 hours. But Apple, no. Apple hasn't done much of that. There's no meme marketing, no viral challenges, no engagement loops, right? So there's so many great shows on Apple TV Plus. I've watched many of them. They should be cultural makers, right? But instead they get lost in the noise. And if you look at it, even Apple's own producers, right? This is someone who produced a show on Apple TV Plus called La Maison. It's a French show about high fashion. He calls Apple probably the worst marketer in the universe. He was upset that Apple just didn't market his show in the US or anywhere else. I mean, this is stinging criticism because this is not some anti-Apple fanboy talking about this. It is someone who got loads of money from Apple and you'd think wouldn't bite the hand that feeds him, but here you go, right? So in this attention economy, right, if you have silence, if you don't get out there, nobody is going to come to you. You need to go to where people are. And that show that I mentioned, it's a French show, but it also goes to the fact that most of the content on Apple TV Plus is English. There's very little by way of non-English content. They have a couple of French shows, a couple of Spanish shows. They have one show that's like 1.5 shows that's set in Japan, right? But there's no localized content, and it's difficult for Apple, I think, if it wants to be a global streaming player, if it doesn't have a substantial content catalog in different languages. If you go to Netflix, right, you can look at the different languages genres, right? There's Korean, there's Mandarin, there's Spanish. If you come from those, if your first language is those, some of those, there's something for you in Netflix. Come to Apple TV Plus, it's English or nothing. So the lesson here is, if you're not speaking the local language, literally and culturally, you're just not in the game. Now there's signs of progress, right? We have some cross promotions with broadband providers and cable. So that thing about do you need an Apple TV set-top box to watch Apple TV Plus? I think that is slowly going away. Apple is learning to play with people who have access to the living room, right, in a way that they don't. So I think they work with these set-top boxes, broadband providers, so that their app is one of several. Okay, I know, I'm quite sure that Apple hates that. They want to be front and center, but they've got to learn to play by the rules, right, of the game that they're going into. And they're also starting some clever cross promotions with for some of the more successful shows. Severance is a show that was really took off, had a very cult, passionate fan base after the first season. I was one of them who just like couldn't wait for 2-3 years for the second season. And when the second season dropped, I think Apple knew they had a hit on their hands. They got people going to all the talk shows talking about the show, but they also started to do things like this, where they had in-person live kind of promotion of Severance, the show. For those of you who haven't watched it yet, I strongly encourage you. It's a dystopian office comedy, drama, mystery. And what they did here was they created this cube at Grand Central Station in New York. They just didn't announce anything. They got some of the stars there and showed the cubicles in Severance. And it created a huge amount of buzz. And I'm sure Severance is one of their best show, most watched shows on the platform. It's probably going to get some awards later on. So Apple, I think, is learning, but they're still in that learning mode. And they need to be faster in terms of how they get their shows out, or else they're going to be losing the trust of the content producers, the content producers, the actors, and who are contributing or creating that kind of content. Obviously, Apple's got huge amounts of cash. They can still continue to pay top dollar for that for stars to come on, but really, if there's not enough buzz around their shows, then you got to really pay over the odds for stars to come. So here's the big question: if Apple, king of product marketing in, I guess, the 2000s and 2010s, can struggle this hard in streaming, what does that mean for you, your brand, your content, and strategy? Right? If you've got any thoughts, please put them in the chat or in the comments. Where do you think Apple TV Plus is going to go next? Are you a subscriber to Apple TV Plus? Do you like what you're seeing? What do you think they could be doing more of? And has this sparked ideas for you in your role, whether as the leader of your company, your brand, your business unit, right? How should you be approaching marketing, bearing in mind the lessons of Apple TV Plus? This is Conrad Chua on Business Case Study, and it's a beautiful day outside, so wish you all the best.